You know that moment when your married coworker casually mentions their mortgage payment is somehow lower than your rent for a cramped one-bedroom apartment? Yeah, that's not a coincidence. That's the system working exactly as designed. And today, we're going to talk about something that nobody in the personal finance space wants to acknowledge because it makes everyone uncomfortable. Being single in America in 2026 is financially devastating in ways that compound over decades. I'm talking about your married friend who just bought a house in a neighborhood where you can barely afford to grab coffee, and their combined household income is maybe $120,000, while you're sitting there making $75,000 on your own. You're not irresponsible. You don't have credit card debt. You meal prep. You brown bag your lunch 4 days a week. And yet somehow you're hemorrhaging $1,800 a month to live in an apartment so small you can touch the refrigerator and the stove at the same time. Meanwhile, their mortgage payment is $1,600 for a three-bedroom house with a backyard. How does that math even work? Here's the uncomfortable truth. It doesn't work, at least not in your favor. And what we're going to break down today is exactly how much money you're losing every single year simply because you don't have a partner to split bills with, and why the entire American financial system was built to punish people who are flying solo. My name is Troy, and I spend way too much time thinking about how the tax code and insurance algorithms quietly screw over single people. If you're someone who's been doing everything right with your money, but somehow can't seem to get ahead while your coupled-up friends are buying houses and maxing out their Roth IRAs, make sure to hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if this helps you out. Let's start with the most obvious cost, housing. And I need you to really pay attention to this because the math here is genuinely insane. If you're single and renting in any decent American city, you're looking for a one-bedroom apartment, right? That one bedroom is going to cost you around $1,800 a month in most markets. Now, a two-bedroom apartment in that same building costs maybe $2,400. You'd think that cutting out a bedroom would cut the price in half. That would make sense. But no, you're paying 75% of the cost for 50% of the space. That's not a discount, that's a scam with a 12-month lease agreement attached to it. But here's what your married friends are doing. They're taking that $2,400 two-bedroom and splitting it down the middle. Each person pays $1,200. You're paying $1,800 for less space, worse amenities, and the absolute joy of doing all your own dishes with nobody to even pretend might help you. They're saving $600 a month compared to you. That's $7,200 a year just on rent alone. And we haven't even started talking about utilities, internet, or the fact that you're buying a full-size container of laundry detergent that's going to last you 6 months because there's zero economy of scale when you're living alone. Now let's talk about groceries, because this is where it gets legitimately insulting. American grocery stores are designed for families. Everything is sold in bulk because that's what moves product. The 24-pack of paper towels is literally half the per-unit cost of the 6-pack. The family-sized bag of rice is a third of the price per pound compared to the small bag. But you can't buy the bulk size because you're one person. That rice is going to go stale in your pantry. Those paper towels are going to sit in your closet for 2 years. So you're paying what I call the singles tax at the grocery store every single week. You're paying roughly 30% more per unit on almost everything compared to someone who's splitting a Costco membership with a spouse. And meal planning? Don't even get me started. Every recipe you find online is written for 4 servings. You're cooking for 1. So you either eat the same thing 4 days in a row, or you throw away half of what you buy because it goes bad before you can finish it. Either way, you're getting absolutely destroyed on food costs. A single person in America spends an average of $450 a month on groceries for meals that a married couple could make for $600 total. Per person, they're each spending $300. You're spending $450. That's another $1,800 a year just evaporating. Let's move to something that literally nobody talks about: insurance. Car insurance companies in America charge single people more. And this isn't some conspiracy theory, it's right there in the actuarial tables. Statistically, married people are viewed as more responsible drivers. You can have a spotless driving record, but if you check that single box on the application, you're paying a premium. Homeowners insurance works the same way. Life insurance costs more if you're unmarried. And if you're buying health insurance on the marketplace because your job doesn't offer it, you don't get the benefit of a family plan discount structure. You're literally subsidizing everyone else's lower rates. And then there's the tax code. This is where the federal government openly admits they don't care about you. The standard deduction for a single filer in 2026 is $15,300. For a married couple filing jointly, it's $29,200. Now on the surface, that looks fair, right? It's basically double. Except it's not fair at all, because two single people living separately would get a combined $29,200 in deductions, but a married couple living in one household gets that same benefit while splitting every single cost. They're being rewarded for consolidation, and you're being penalized for independence. And if you're in a higher tax bracket, the pain gets exponentially worse. The married filing jointly tax brackets are nearly double the single brackets up to a certain income threshold. Translation, the IRS looked at single people and said, you know what? They can afford to pay more. Why? Because the entire tax system was designed in the 1950s, when the assumption was that everyone gets married, has 2.5 kids, buys a house with a white picket fence, and lives that suburban American dream. If you're not following that exact script, you're a glitch in the system. And glitches get taxed. But here's the cruelest part, and I need you to really understand this. It's not just the money you're spending right now. It's the opportunities you're missing because you're spending that money. Your married friends are building equity. They bought that house because two incomes made them eligible for a mortgage that you could never qualify for on your own. Even if you make decent money, even if you're financially responsible, the banks look at your single income and say it's not enough. You need to make $85,000 just to afford an $1,800 rent payment under the 30% rule that landlords use. But to buy a $400,000 house, which is basically the median home price in America right now, you'd need to make around $120,000, because now there's a down payment, closing costs, and mortgage qualification standards that are much stricter. Your married coworker making $60,000 combined with their spouse's $60,000 gets the house. You making $75,000 alone get to keep renting. They're accumulating wealth through home equity. You're making your landlord wealthy. This is the compounding effect of the singles tax. It's not just that you're paying more today, it's that paying more today actively prevents you from building the assets that would let you pay less in the future. Here's what most people don't realize. If you're single and living alone in America, statistically, you're spending about $10,000 more per year than a partnered person living the same lifestyle. That's rent premiums, food waste, insurance markups, and tax penalties, all stacked on top of each other. Over a decade, that's $100,000 that just vanished into thin air simply because you didn't have someone to split bills with. But that $10,000 annual penalty isn't just a fixed cost you accept and move on from. It's a compounding trap that gets exponentially worse the longer you stay single. Because that money you're losing to the singles tax is money you're not investing. It's money that isn't growing in your 401k or your Roth IRA. It's money that will never compound. Let me run a simulation for you that's going to make you genuinely nauseous. Take two people, both 25 years old, both making $65,000 a year. Person A gets married at 26. Person B stays single until 35. Person A immediately benefits from what I call the marriage subsidy. Their rent drops because they're splitting a one-bedroom instead of each paying for separate studios. They save $800 a month. They take that $800 and invest it into a basic S&P 500 index fund, averaging 7% annual returns. Person B keeps paying full price for everything, no savings left over to invest. Fast forward to age 35. Person A has been investing $800 monthly for 9 years with compound interest working in their favor.
That's roughly $110,000 sitting in their brokerage account. Person B has zero. They spent that entire decade just trying to keep their head above water, paying the premium for existing alone. But here's where it gets darker. At 35, person B finally gets married. Great, right? Now they can start saving too. Except person A's $110,000 is still growing at 7% annual returns. That money doubles roughly every 10 years through compound interest without them adding another dime. By retirement at 65, that initial 9-year advantage has turned into over $850,000. Person B starts investing the same $800 monthly at age 35. They do it for 30 years straight, which is twice as long as person A's initial contribution period. At retirement, they'll have around $980,000. They invested $288,000 of their own money. Person A invested only $86,400 of their own money, but ended up with almost as much purely because they started earlier. The singles tax didn't just cost person B $10,000 a year in living expenses. It cost them nearly $1 million in lost compounding opportunity. This is why every financial advisor tells you to start investing young and max out your Roth IRA as early as possible. But what they don't tell you is that staying single makes starting young nearly impossible for most people because you're too busy paying the existence premium to build any foundation. Now let's talk about something even more insidious, the psychological warfare of being single in a couple's economy. You know that feeling when you're the only unmarried person at a dinner party and everyone's discussing their mortgage rates and refinancing strategies and their joint financial planning sessions? That's not just socially awkward. That's your brain processing the reality that you're playing a completely different game with completely different rules, and nobody wants to acknowledge it. Society gaslights single people constantly. You'll hear things like, just budget better, or maybe cut back on the DoorDash, as if your financial struggles are a character flaw rather than a mathematical inevitability. Your married friend will genuinely suggest you try meal prepping, completely unaware that they're meal prepping for 2 people in a kitchen they own, splitting the grocery bill, while you're trying to justify buying the family-size anything when you know half of it's going to rot in your fridge before you can finish it. And here's what makes this truly perverse. The system pushes you toward partnership for financial survival, but then judges you if your relationship decisions seem economically motivated. You stay single too long and you're financially penalized. You partner up for practical reasons and suddenly you're morally suspect. You can't win. The game is rigged in both directions. So what's the actual move here? How do you survive financially in a system designed for couples when you're solo? First, you need to stop pretending the standard personal finance advice applies to you. When some financial guru on YouTube says you should save 20% of your income, that advice was written for a household with 2 incomes and shared expenses. Your actual target needs to be closer to 30% or more to achieve the same outcome. It's not fair, it's just math. Second, you need to manufacture the benefits of partnership artificially. Find a financially responsible roommate who's also tired of getting gouged. Split a 2-bedroom apartment. Split the Costco membership. Split the utilities. Split the streaming services. You're not a failure for having a roommate at 35. You're a rational economic actor, optimizing for a hostile system. That roommate is worth $800 to $1,200 a month. That's $10,000 to $14,000 annually. That's basically your tax refund for being single. Third, if you absolutely can't live with someone, build what I call a shadow household. This is basically an informal buying co-op. Find 3 other single friends who are also tired of getting ripped off. Split one Costco membership 4 ways. One person does the run, buys the industrial-sized paper towels and the 20-pound bag of rice, and you split the goods in the parking lot. Suddenly, you have access to bulk pricing without the waste. You're not paying the 30% markup for single-serving convenience anymore. Fourth, look at the map. This is called geographic arbitrage, and it's one of the fastest ways to give yourself a massive raise. If you're single and trying to build wealth in New York, San Francisco, Los Angeles, or Miami, you're playing the game on nightmare difficulty. A one-bedroom apartment in a city like Austin, Raleigh, Pittsburgh, or even Charlotte might save you $1,500 a month compared to a coastal hub. That's $18,000 a year after taxes. That's not just savings, that's your entire missing down payment fund appearing out of thin air. Your married friends can justify the expensive city because they're splitting that $3,500 rent. You're eating it alone. If your job is remote or if your industry exists elsewhere, moving is the single fastest way to delete the singles tax from your life. Fifth, if you can possibly swing it, buy property and house hack. Buy a duplex, live in one unit, rent out the other. Let your tenant pay your mortgage while you stop setting money on fire with rent. It's harder to qualify for the loan alone, yes. The bank will scrutinize your income more carefully, you'll need better credit and a bigger down payment, but it's one of the few ways to actually escape the trap rather than just minimize the damage. And finally, stop internalizing the shame. You're not failing at adulthood because you have a roommate at 35. You're not financially irresponsible because you can't afford to live alone in a one-bedroom apartment that costs $2,200 a month in your city. The median single-person income in America literally cannot afford median single-person housing in most major markets. That's not your fault. That's a policy choice that prioritizes married households over individual humans. Look, the singles tax isn't going away. It's baked into every tax bracket, every insurance algorithm, every mortgage qualification formula. Waiting for it to become fair is like waiting for your landlord to voluntarily lower your rent. It's not happening. So stop waiting for permission to optimize your life around the reality you're actually living in. Get the roommate. Buy the duplex if you can. Split everything that can be split. Build wealth despite the handicap, not because the handicap disappeared. Because here's the final brutal truth. The math doesn't care about your relationship status. The IRS doesn't care that you're waiting for the right person. The insurance company definitely doesn't care that you're focusing on your career right now. They just see a single filer checkbox and charge accordingly. You can either keep paying the penalty and hoping the system becomes fair, or you can stop playing by rules that were written to punish you in the first place. That's not giving up. That's just refusing to be the sucker at the table anymore. If this video helped you understand why your finances feel harder than everyone else's, even though you're doing everything right, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment letting me know if you're dealing with the singles tax or if you've found creative ways to work around it. I read every single comment, and your strategies might help someone else who's in the same boat. I'll see you in the next one.